All right, we are live and the public is coming in at the moment.
Okay, good evening. We are calling to order the February 23rd meeting of the Norwalk Common Council. If you will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Clerk, would you please read the announcement and call the roll?
This meeting is being recorded for rebroadcast. We ask everyone to speak clearly one at a time. Please state your name when called upon by the presiding chair. Members of the public can access this meeting by telephone, Zoom, and/or the City of Norwalk YouTube channel. There is a link with specific instructions that is on the agenda. Mr. Burnett.
Present.
Ms. Johnson.
Present.
Mr. Langella.
Present.
Mr. Sacchinelli.
Present.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Huvelman.
Present.
Mr. Roberts.
Present.
Ms. Ravulis.
Present.
Young.
Here.
Mr. Kites.
I'm here.
Mr. Theodorides.
Here.
Mr. Keegan.
Here.
Mr. Sarahcentee.
Here.
Mr. Livingston.
Here.
Ms. Shanahan.
Here.
15 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The first item on the agenda would be acceptance of the minutes of the special meeting of February 9th, 2021. Do I have a motion to bring that to the floor? Moved by Mr. Huvelman. Any corrections, deletions, additions to the minutes of February 9th? Mr. Burnett.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 3, the third paragraph down, it says he thanked Ms. Connor, and it should be Ms. Connors. That's Sharon Connors with an S. And then on the following page, the last paragraph, page 4, the last sentence reads, all department heads that they cannot look at any increases over Mr. Dackwitz's recommendation as opposed to increased. Just grammatical error correction.
Adding 2 S's. Any further additions, corrections, deletions? Seeing none, all in favor of the minutes as corrected, please signify. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the approval of or acceptance of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 9th, 2021. Do I have a motion? Mr. Sacchinelli, any corrections, deletions, additions? Mr. Burnett.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the page 4 of those minutes, the first line, Mayor Rilling said that each February we celebrate Black History Month, not Monty. I don't know what Monty is, but it's Black History Month.
Okay.
That was the only correction.
Any further corrections or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of the acceptance of the minutes as corrected? Opposed? And abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public participation. Mr. Manzi, do we have people that wish to address the council?
Yes, we do, Mayor. If anyone would like to address the council, please raise your hand electronically by clicking the raised hand icon, and I will unmute you one at a time. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
And please remind all that we ask that comments be kept to 3 minutes.
Yes, 3
Thank
minutes.
you.
Thank you, Mayor. The first person we have is Justin Matley. Justin, if you unmute yourself, you'll be able to speak.
Hello, is this working here?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you, Council and Mr. Mayor. My name is Justin Matley. I'm a stutterer. So if you hear some interruptions, it's probably not my connection. It's probably my speech. So just forewarning. I lived in Norwalk for 8 years. I'm on the Cranberry SGC. I'm a parent of 2 girls, and I'm a Connecticut business owner. I just wanted to make just a couple quick comments on both the operating and capital sectors of the budgets that we're referring to of late. And I wanted to resolve perhaps a few misconceptions, I think, that are out there. Number one, we put schools at 53% of the city's operating budget. I know some say it's 61%, but this isn't, but those latter figures are an apple to oranges comparison. 60% considers in-kind and debt service, i.e. capital, and is not the operative comparison to other districts in the area. So you have to use equitable formulas. These are some discussions I've seen out there, so I want to just make that note. So Stanford 54% should not be the benchmark for Norwalk school quality. Other surrounding areas, and not just the Westons and Dariennes, invest in the high 50s and above at significant academic ROI. It seems every year we look at the education annually as a burdensome event. It's a nuisance for everybody. And the process absolutely is. It should be collaborative across the board. It should be transparent on both sides. It seems everyone goes into it with their guns and knives drawn before we even reach the table. And that's true for the government, that's true for the public, especially social media. And we have to do better as an electorate. Education is not a chore. It's an investment that serves our community. And according to the National Bureau of Economic Research and the Connecticut study, for every $1 invested on public schools, the property values increase $20. Investment in schools is a benefit to everyone, even those without children. It involves lower crime. There's a lower need for welfare programs, less demand on the city's public and private healthcare system. Finally, a note on capital. I understand we're being conservative due to unpredictable economic climate right now, and that makes I understand that rationale. But now isn't the time to be austere. With rates this low, we can afford to be bold. And while we can keep our AAA rating intact while negotiating with creditors, which is a normal part of any private or public process, with 5 to 10 year outlooks, I should mention that a temporary dip, a set dip, arranged with creditors to AA does come with negligible interest increase of between 0.05 and 0.25 percentage points. I'm not sure someone would refi their home over that, much less provide resources and security for our kids' welfare and learning opportunities. In the end, some of the city's finance positions are at best passive and at worst sometimes misleading. And I think a lot of this is the nature of the process that the public learns about the information. And that's an effect on the process as a whole. I'm a proud Norwalker. I'm a parent. I'm a Democrat who believes in quality education and educational opportunities that the Board of Education budgets afford. I hope we can find the bravery to compromise with the board, with a super that wants to be collaborative on the operating ask, fund our bathrooms, a new Cranberry, of which I'm partial, and make prudent decisions going forward that lead with our kids and empathy, not ourselves and austerity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Donna. I cannot pronounce your last name, but
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Donna Smyrniatopoulos, and I live at 18 Shorefront Park. I emailed the council earlier today, but I would like to have my comments recorded into the record. Thank you for letting me speak. The Connecticut Center of Economic Analysis, which is part of the University of Connecticut School of Business, released a forecast in May of 2020 that augurs poorly for the state's economic future. It begins, quote, "It looks bad. Even an optimistic scenario argues recovery will be slow and painful. A more realistic assessment sees Connecticut struggling to recover in employment, real output, personal income, and state revenues out past 2030. Connecticut's economy was in trouble before COVID-19 shutdown. In February 2020, Connecticut had not yet recovered from the contraction of the 2007-2009 Great Recession." I'm going to skip over a few lines that I included in your notes. In Washington, D.C. this week, the House Budget Committee voted Monday to approve a $1.9 trillion stimulus package proposed by President Biden. The new stimulus package includes $170 billion earmarked for public schools by the Biden administration. The Norwalk Public Schools will receive millions in direct aid as a result of this package, plus additional economic aid for the city and state. Bear in mind that we all taxpayers, are paying for the federal aid as well. In Greenwich, meanwhile, the BET suggested that the Greenwich Public Schools limit their budget increase request to 3.38% over last year. The superintendent, Tony Jones, is seeking nearly 4%, but still less than the 4.6% that Norwalk is asking. And remember, last year in Greenwich, the Board of Selectmen held the line on budget increases out of respect for the economic hardship associated with COVID-19 business closures. In Hartford, the Democrat-controlled legislature's Martin Looney is proposing legislation to levy additional property tax on homes valued over $400,000. If passed, this bill will hit middle-class Norwalkers very hard. Average home values in Norwalk are already higher than the bottom end of the Looney bill. Once again, Norwalk is punished for its relatively high land values. If you think this bill will only impact the rich, you're wrong. This one will hurt average Norwalk homeowners already saddled with an average property tax increase of 4% this year if you pass this budget as approved by the Finance Committee last week. Given the grim economic statistics from CCEA and given the relative restraint of our more affluent neighbors in Greenwich, how can the Common Council in good conscience approve a budget with a burn rate of over $1 million a day, an increase of $15 million over last year with a general fund drawdown of $8 million? Who do you think is going to cover this? Maybe it's easier to approve this Leviathan when you don't have to actually look taxpayers in the eye. City Hall is still fundamentally closed for business unless your purpose is to pay your tax bill. There's even a drive-through option for our convenience. There's nothing convenient about tax obligations so onerous that even longtime Norwalk residents with generations of history are fleeing the state in search of more felicitous tax rates. Places where I have 3 more seconds.
30 seconds, yeah, wrap it up, please.
Places where state and local governments create incentives for investment in real estate and business. According to the CCEA, Connecticut has a lot of catching up to do. I enjoin the Common Council to do the right thing for your neighbors. Do not draw down the rainy day fund. Do not raise residential property taxes, and do not approve this budget as presented. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Smyrniatopoulos.
All right, next we have Ilyana Suniga.
Good evening. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and honorable members of the Common Council. My name is Ilyana Suniga. I live at 8 Running Brook Lane in Norwalk. I am the proud mother of Rodrigo, a 7th grader in West Rocks, Bernardo, a freshman in PTech. I am also a member of the PTech SGC and the founder of Latinos Unidos in Norwalk, a group that represents over 1,000 Latino members in our city. The only thing more expensive than education is ignorance, and that was said by Benjamin Franklin. According to a study by UNICEF, it shows that on average, each additional year of education boosts a person's income by 10% and increases our country's GDP by 18%. Other speakers have done a great job presenting data and numbers. I will speak my heart. Today, we're at a crossroad and we get to decide if we increase the budget for our Norwalk public schools or we don't. As an immigrant from Mexico that came in this country 14 years ago, I had the privilege to naturalize as a US citizen and become a contributor as a taxpayer and homeowner in our town. As a person of color, I keep hearing about equality and closing the gap in the educational divide. At the same time, year after year, here we stand fighting to keep up with the needs of our Norwalk schools. And as much as I would love a new high school, I would like our children to have some things as basic as working bathroom doors. As a 43-year-old woman, almost 44, I would like to go back to Ben Franklin's quote I mentioned at the beginning. These kids are the future of Norwalk. When we are older, they will go into the workplace and their pay, employment, and property taxes will fund their social securities when we're old. Our future is in their hands. And some of these children will become voters in the next local election, and they'll certainly won't forget who left them behind. Let's be smart in investing in everyone's future, without our children being supported in all they need to be successful in education, whether they're bathrooms, air conditioners, computers, reading, and other curricular materials, or a welcome center. We are selling them short. We are selling ourselves short. They are our future. Shortchanging our children is shortchanging ourselves. I will end with another quote, this time by Abraham Lincoln. The best way to predict your future is to create it. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you, Ms. Suniga.
Next, we have Sarahcentee.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarahcentee and I live at 6 Susan Court. I'm obviously here to speak in support of funding the Board of Education's budget request. Unfortunately, last week I was about 1 minute too late for the comments for the Finance Committee's meeting because I was wrangling a 2-year-old. But I did get there in time to listen to the committee commentary. And one theme I heard repeated is that the city has invested a lot of money over the past several years in the schools. And I want you to know that the parents are aware of this, and we're incredibly thankful for the investments that have been made in the schools. In fact, I think I said this last year, that's one of the things that drew me to Norwalk when we purchased our house here 3 years ago, was that investment in the schools. But I am growing concerned by the implication that I hear in some of these sentiments where we may have invested enough for now, or we need to cut back in that investment, either this year or potentially in the future, because families like mine have relied on that investment, and it's what keeps us here. Because when we underfund our schools, and make no mistake about it, by not funding our schools in this year's budget, we are underfunding our schools. Our children in the community are the ones that ultimately pay the price. This year's school operating budget request is exceptionally reasonable. It's essentially a flat budget. It isn't introducing new or elaborate programs. It merely covers contractually required annual increases or costs. And perhaps more importantly, the superintendent made a good faith effort to make this budget as bare bones as possible before submitting it to you. For example, she reduced magnet school funding by 60%, which I have to tell you, as a parent of a child in the magnet schools, I was not necessarily a fan of up front, but I recognize she made that decision, which was probably a hard decision for her, for the greater good of our community, and because she thought it was the right thing to do for Norwalk. And I think that these are hard decisions she's doing for us and our community, and she's doing a fabulous job. The proof is out there alone this year with how Norwalk has done in COVID. So I also remember sitting in this room last year when we were all there in person, and this council with many of the same members sitting on it saying they looked forward to forging a relationship with the new superintendent and supporting her in this year's budget. And yet here we are, another budget year, and only a 2% increase for the schools compared to a completely inequitable 6% increase for the city. I'm curious if the council has put any thought into where this $5 million shortfall will come from, because $5 million isn't a small amount. We're not talking about entirely new programs that can be eliminated. This cut means that if things stand, next year there will be $5 million less in programs, services, or staff that our children currently receive. I understand it's been a tough year and many are hurting. I don't want to negate those realities. Because they are very real. But I also want to remind you that there's a large population of minor residents that depend on the schools and who don't have a voice to vote yet. And the pandemic has disproportionately affected them as well. Students are being left behind every day. And if we refuse to fund our schools in times like these, we only exacerbate that issue. This is not the year to have inequity between funding the city and the schools. Maybe you can't get the Board of Ed to the 4.6 requested, but you can certainly get them more than the 2% being offered, because anything less is completely inequitable and sends a very clear message about the priority of the schools in the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Cordes. I live at 251 Newtown Avenue. I am a single parent. I have 2 children in the Norwalk school system, and I am here not to advocate for fully funding the Board of Ed budget. Unfortunately, I think that the Board of Ed's request for additional monies is disingenuous, considering that last year the budget was increased by more than $9 million based on the agreement that an efficiency accounting be performed. That accounting has been delayed. It consistently has been pushed back, citing many different reasons for an accounting to have not been completed and not been done. And I think we stand here and we talk about, making smart investments into our future and our children's education. And unfortunately, because of our statutory structure in Connecticut, there is very little oversight over where the budget money goes that for the money that the Board of Ed receives. And I think that, as a parent, yes, I want my children to be educated, but I also want the Board of Ed to be accountable for how and where they're spending their money. And if we are consistently not given absolute transparency into how that's happening, how can the Board of Ed's budget increase be understood, and how can we know that money is actually making it to the benefit of our children? Everyone has talked about fully funding the Board of Ed's request, but no one's asking where that money's going, and no one's asking how the $30 million that have been increased in the Board of Ed's budget over the last 3 years have actually benefit our children. I think that's the more important question to be asking. I think the Board of Ed needs to be held accountable for their spending. And I think we need to find efficiencies to benefit our children, not just increase taxpayer dollars to fund the education of our children in Norwalk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Heidi Alterman.
Hi, my name is Heidi Alterman. I live at 29 Sherwood Street in Norwalk, and I'm a parent of 3 girls, one of whom is a first grader at Cranberry, and I am also on the School Governance Council at Cranberry, as well as co-leader of the Diversity and Education Committee from the PTO. I sent an email earlier, and I've sent a few others to many members here, but I would first like to just address something that the previous speaker, Jessica, mentioned. What I have heard repeatedly is that people in Common Council, maybe in other areas of government, do not fully trust the Board of Education and how they spend our money. I understand that is not a small thing. So what I asked last week, I'm asking again tonight, is that we take a moment and pause and think, what can we do in order to gain trust? I have spoken to many members of the Board of Education, as well as members of Common Council, as well as parents from different schools. I'm wondering if we could have another possibility of audit, only one where the audit was chosen by neutral parties. It's my understanding that audits were denied based on the people that were going to perform it. I also understand there is a history here of people not having trust. I don't want to speak about something I don't know, but I can tell you from what I've seen from our new superintendent, she literally is doing everything that she can to save money. She is not trying to waste money. She has already brought in over $2 million of grants, I believe. Our school, Cranberry Elementary, is one that will benefit from some of those after-school programs and enrichment. So what I am asking of you guys, which believe me, I don't think is a small thing, I am asking for you to reconsider accepting the 2.2% and actually think about a raise to the 4.6. If you are not sure on this, I am just asking for you to have a delay and request further information. Please do not continue to repeat the cycle of just not trusting. We literally put our trust in all of these teachers and the Board of Education members to get us through this pandemic, and they did it, and they did it in an amazing manner. I really think we need to consider what we are about to do. I thank you all for your hard work, and I appreciate everybody here. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Alterman.
If anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand electronically now. All right. Mayor, we have Jessica Jones.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. My name's Jessica Jones. Yes, that is my real legal name. I live at 307 Newtown Avenue. And I will interestingly be the Jessica that opposes what the other Jessica on Newtown Avenue had to say. I think you guys, first of all, I'm not really one that follows politics. I'm not one that really gets in the nitty gritty, so I can't sit here and throw numbers and data at you. What I do know is that our schools are at 105% capacity. To not fund what's needed at 100%, if not more, because we are over capacity, doesn't really make sense. If you were doing business, you wouldn't be doing it that way. I'm a lifelong resident of Norwalk. Actually, Mayor Rilling, my brother was very good friends with your son when they were little at Tracy School. I'm seriously considering leaving because of everything, and not just Board of Ed, but everything. This city is not, we are not Stanford, we're Norwalk. We need to start remembering our roots, and our roots are our families and our children. And if we don't take care of that, then we're what are we really? It comes down to family and our roots. And I really hope that you guys will consider at least the 4.6%. I mean, I have a son who's in special ed, and the thought of him losing services is bringing out the mama bear in me, which is why I'm speaking tonight. So I really do hope you will all consider the increase, that at least 4.6%. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. I'll mention your son to my son.
Next, we have Addison.
My name is not Addison. That's my daughter. She attends Cranberry. My name is John Lachansky, and I live at 2 Grumman Court in Norwalk, Connecticut. I have 2 kids in Cranberry, one in 2nd grade and one in kindergarten. I'm here to ask you to reconsider the proposed budget recommendation of 2.2% and increase it to the 4.6% proposed by the Board of Education. I'm going to speak on the use of technology. The use of technology through virtual learning that my kids are participating in has been a struggle for our family. I'm thankful that Cranberry stayed open for the most part, which has helped immensely. There's no metric by which virtual learning success is measured other than having my kids sit in front of a screen for 6 hours a day, which is much longer than the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends is healthy for kids. We are a year into this pandemic, yet we still use the same ideas. What worked to get us through last year can't be the standard. Our teachers and students deserve better virtual learning platform to make it successful. There are successful platforms out there, fully remote learning that is centered around what works for kids, keeping screen time to a minimum, and work tailored for kids' educational needs to be a priority. This takes funding, the funding we're asking for. The teachers should have the resources available to successfully teach online. I've watched positive COVID cases turn the school to remote learning, and I get that and I understand that. Now I'm watching snow days turn the school into remote learning. We can't continue to rely on the get us through mentality while we lean on it so heavily. We continue to rely on technology in a way we never have before. And we need to invest in this technology for the sake of our kids. I'm asking you to reconsider the proposed budget. I believe that working through this together and getting the teachers and kids what they need is how we navigate this pandemic, and funding is the first step. Our children's education needs to come first. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Teresa Peterson.
Hello, good evening. Teresa Peterson. I'm at 32 Dock Road in Norwalk. I am the parent of a kindergartner who has been remote learning since day one. We chose to remote learn him for family health reasons. I know that everybody knows this, but I feel it, well, let me start by saying I would like to ask you to reconsider the 2.2% and fully funding what the Board of Education has asked at 4.6. And one of the reasons I ask that is because we have asked so much of the teachers and the school administrators in the last year. When COVID hit almost a year ago, we asked the teachers to completely change the way they taught, and they switched over to teaching remote, and they did this with very little time. And in the fall, we asked the teachers to put their health and the health of their family at risk. to teach our kids. And we ask them to teach both in-school kids and remote kids at the same time. And that they do that so that all the kids get equal learning. We asked the teachers to prep and be ready to go remote with no notice in case there was a COVID outbreak. We've asked so much of the teachers. We've asked so much of the school administrators, and we've asked so much of the kids. And now we're asking you to give them the funding that they need. It's not, they're not asking for all of these extra programs. They're asking to be funded. And I would ask that you reconsider funding the education budget at 4.6%. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson.
If anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand electronically now. Okay, next we have Barbara.
Hi, Barbara Meyer Mitchell, 10 Ellen Road. I just want to thank you for being courageous in a difficult economy to even consider a tax increase. I know that's a difficult thing to do, and I know that you're doing it for very good reasons, which is that Norwalk is a city on the rise, and we need to continue to invest in the services we provide our residents. So first, I want to make sure that you know that I understand what you're up against and that I'm very grateful to you for considering that. The next point I would like to ask you to consider, and I know tonight you're just setting the cap, but I'd like you to consider making a more equitable allocation of the capital of the operating resources between the Board of Education and city departments. I support many of the goals that you're trying to achieve with your budget, and I hope that you also support the goals that we're trying to achieve with ours, and that together we can move move Norwalk forward this fiscal year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer Mitchell.
Is there anyone else that wishes to address the council? I see none, Mayor.
Okay, Ms. King, did you receive any correspondence that you would like read into the record?
I received one email today, Mr. Mayor. It's from Isabelle Hargrove. Dear members of the Common Council, as we all are acutely aware, the pandemic has wrecked the lives of many in our community and has created serious financial hardships for many home and business owners in Norwalk. In light of this harsh reality, it is paramount that the city of Norwalk not raise property taxes this year and keep the drawdown from the rainy day fund to an absolute minimum. Therefore, I support a 2% only increase in the Board of Ed budget and recommend the same for the city side. These are unprecedented times, and the hardship created by the pandemic does impose serious restrictions on our ability to conduct business as usual, including spending as usual. Right now is unfortunately not the time to invest. It is the time to save and cut spending. Please hold the line at a 2% increase for the full budget. Respectfully submitted to be read into the record, Isabelle Hargrove, 4 Red Oak Lane, Norwalk, Connecticut.
Thank you, Ms. King. Does any council person have any communication from any constituent that they feel they'd like to have read into the record? Okay, seeing none, I imagine, Mr. Manzi, that we have no one else that wishes to address the council.
We do have one other person. Did she speak already? Heidi Alterman?
Yes, she did.
You did, okay.
Okay, so seeing none, we will move on with the agenda. We have no resignations or appointments this evening. Under my remarks, and just very, very short, One, as you know, the state of Connecticut just converted to an age-based vaccine schedule for the COVID-19 vaccine. People now under the age of people that are eligible now are over 65 and between 74. And next week it will become people that are over 55. And as you follow the schedule, which is outlined in my daily briefing, you will also see that there is an ongoing schedule of when other people will become available. So if you want to look on that, or if you want to go into the check with the Norwalk Health Department, they'll provide you with all the information so that you can know exactly when you become eligible. And they will also help you navigate through the VAMS system, or give you information so that you can register or get an appointment. They can also make you aware of different locations where the vaccine is being administered. We will be hosting a town hall meeting soon, and with members, some members of the Common Council and some members of the clergy. We will be having a press conference and hopefully be conducting a vaccine clinic down at Grace Baptist Church. Part of the process will be with Mr. Burnett, who's on the council, Ms. Young, who's on the council, and any other person on the council that wishes to be a part of it. The key is to try to reduce the disparity between the people of color who are not receiving the vaccine at the same rate as the white people and people who are wealthier. And we want to make sure, because they are the most vulnerable community. We showed that by looking at an overlay of our hotspots in the city of Norwalk, and it was very clear that we have a situation that we wanted to try to remedy. Last but not least, I have joined with mayors across the nation to recognize March 1st as COVID Memorial Day, which shall be a day of memory for the people, over 500,000 now, that have lost their lives due to this vaccine. Due to the COVID-19. And as such, I have drafted a proclamation, and because Ms. Revolus mentioned it last night at caucus and how she's interested in this day and becoming a part of it, I've asked her to read the proclamation. Ms. Revolus?
Okay, so in start, COVID-19 Memorial Day, whereas March 1st of every year has been designated as COVID-19 Memorial Day for victims and survivors of the vaccine. And whereas due to the COVID-19 pandemic, more than 2.3 million people worldwide and approximately 500,000 in the United States has lost their lives. And whereas COVID-19 could be transmitted from person to person and has spread across the world, creating a global pandemic that is having devastating effects on human life, our community, and our economy. And whereas COVID-19 has had a disparaging impact on low-income communities and communities of color, exacerbating inequities that are already prevalent in our systems that we must address as a nation. And whereas the local and state government, health department, and public servants have taken necessary precautions and actions to protect our residents, as well as finding innovative ways to support our struggling local economy and public services. And whereas public health guidance and policies targeted at prevention, such as social distancing, wearing masks in public, and staying at home, will help lessen the spread of the virus. And whereas each life lost to COVID-19 leaves an emptiness in the hearts of loved ones, family members, and the surrounding communities. Now, therefore, I, Harry W. Riling, Mayor of the City of Norwalk, Connecticut, do hereby proclaim March 1st as COVID-19 Memorial Day. in Norwalk, and in so doing, call upon the citizens to remember those who have lost their lives, and in honor of those who continue to suffer from the impacts of the virus. In witness whereof, I have set my hands and caused the seal of the city of Norwalk, Connecticut to be affixed on this first day of March 2021. Harry W. Riling, Mayor, City of Norwalk, Connecticut.
Thank you, Ms. Revolution. I appreciate that. And as we're remembering those people that lost their lives on March 1st, let's not lose sight of the fact that the other people, the heroes of the pandemic who we have to support and recognize and honor, the firefighters, police officers, first responders who daily protect us in the community, people who, the teachers, people who work in our school system, people who work in our grocery stores, all the essential workers that are out there daily doing the job that they know is essential to our well-being and our economy, and let us not forget those. So having said that, now I'll turn the floor over to the council president, Mr. Saccinelli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight we vote on the operating budget, and I think I speak for more than a few of us when I say that this was by far one of the most challenging budgets that we had to face in recent years, if not ever. We had to weigh the normal issues of the city that we were very familiar with, but also account for many of the unknowns driven by COVID. And although we all remain optimistic as vaccines are distributed and trends continue to move downward, we're not out of the woods yet. More so, if COVID was to be eradicated tomorrow, it is going to take time to truly understand the long-term impact that COVID has caused on the population, on the commercial and residential real estate market, on the businesses that may emerge, and the businesses that unfortunately may not exist. These are all highly dynamic variables that need to be considered from the potential revenue drivers and drainer perspective, and how that impacts the city and the residents, both now as well as over the coming years. And although we are provided detailed facts and figures on departmental needs, funding requests, it cannot be understated that these facts and figures presented cannot help us predict what the future might hold in these truly unprecedented times. When it comes to the budget, these counselors have all had to do a great deal of soul searching in weighing the requests of the departments, the needs of the public, along with trending potential risks and that the future may hold. I want to take this opportunity to thank you all publicly in undertaking this enormous level of due diligence that led you to however you may vote tonight. I also want to thank the city departments, the BOE, Henry, Tom, and everyone else that worked with us to get us here. This was not an easy year. With that said, I'd like to move forward with the consent calendar, which tonight is going to be read by Mr. George Sarahcentee.
Thank you, Councilman Saccinelli. Tonight's consent calendar. 7A, Recreations, Parks, and Cultural Affairs Committee. 7A1, authorize the Mayor Harry W. Riling to enter into an agreement with the Norwalk Karting Association for the use of Calf Pasture Beach for the spring and fall 2021 season to be held on the following dates from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Spring 2021, March 13th, 20th, 27th, April 10th, 17th, 24th, May 1st. Fall 2021, October 2nd, 9th, 16th, 23rd, 30th, November 6th, 13th, and 20th. Please note, dates may not be available depending on scheduled events. If rain on Saturday, Sunday may be available. Estimated attendance, 50 to 100. 7A2, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Riling, to enter into agreement with the Greenwich Kennel Club, Longshore Southport Kennel Club for the use of Taylor Farm for their 89th Greenwich Kennel Club AKC Dog Show, Obedience and Rally Trials, and Longshore Southport Kennel Club AKC Dog Show to be held Saturday, June 12th, 2021, and Sunday, June 13th, 2021, from 8:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Set up to take place 6 a.m. on Thursday, June 10th, 2021, with teardown no later than 12 noon on Monday, June 14th, 2021. Estimated attendance, 500 or less. 7A3, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Riling, to execute a cooperative agreement with the Town of Walden and Friends of Norwalk River Valley Trail, Inc., concerning the retention of a construction contractor and pot construction maintenance of the Will Walk section of the Norwalk River Valley Trail and any and all necessary documents required to perform the cooperative agreement. 7B, Finance and Claims Committee. 7B1, accept and approve the report of the accept and approve the report of the Claims Committee dated February 11th, 2021. 7B2, for informational purposes only, narrative on tax collection dated February 8th, 2021. 7B3, for informational purposes only, monthly tax collectors report dated January 2021. 7B4A, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to exercise the two-year extension options of the agreement for consulting services by and between the City of Norwalk and Advanced Corporate Networking, Inc., DBA Digital Back Office for managed network services related to the Municipal Area Network Project to extend the agreement for a period of 4 years from the end of the initial term at the current monthly rate. City accounts noted, library accounts noted, and Board of Education accounts noted. 7B4B, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to extend the memorandum of agreement with the Norwalk Transit District for its use of the city municipal area network for a period of 4 years from the end of the initial term. 7B5, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an amendment to the agreement for consulting services by and between the City of Norwalk and Advanced Corporate Networking, Inc., DBA Digital Back Office for managed network services related to the Municipal Area Network Project for managed network services related to Calf Pasture Beach and Veterans Park fiber extension for a period of 4 years from date of network acceptance, estimated to be September 30th, 2021, for a total amount not to exceed $226,368. Accounts noted. 7C, Planning Committee. 7C1, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to extend the contract between the City of Norwalk and WSP USA, Inc. for project number 3756, on-call traffic peer review consulting services for a period of 4 months. 7C2, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to extend the contract between the City of Norwalk and DeCarlo and Dahl, Inc. for project number 3788, on-call architectural and site planning review services for a period of 4 months. 7B, Public Works Committee. 7D1, technical correction, amend Common Council action of January 12, 2021, item 7A6 as follows. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute 3-year agreement with Clean Harbors Environmental Services, Inc. for project 4079, household hazardous waste collection for a sum not to exceed $30,000 per year. Account noted. 7D2, technical correction, amend Common Council action of January 12, 2021. Item 7A7 as follows. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a 3.5-year agreement, January 1st, 2021 through June 20th, 2024, with 2 one-year extension options with City Carting, Inc. for project 4077, transportation and disposal of yard waste material for a sum not to exceed $135,000 for fiscal year 2021, $275,000 for fiscal year 2020, $275,000 for fiscal year 2023, and $275,000 for fiscal year 2024. Account noted. 7D3, technical correction, amend Common Council action of January 12, 2021, item 7A8 as follows. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a 3.5-year agreement, January 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024, with 2 one-year extension options with DW Transport and Leasing, Inc. for project 4078, transportation and disposal of street sweeping, catch basin grit, excavated material, and broken structural concrete for a sum not to exceed $75,000 for fiscal year 2021, $150,000 for fiscal year 2022, $150,000 for fiscal year 2023 and $150,000 for fiscal year 2024. Account noted. And that is your consent calendar for today. Back to you, Mr. Sachinelli.
Thank you, Ms. Sarahcentee. Actually, I'm gonna have to drop my paper. I'll move forward with the roll call vote. Mr. Greg Burnett,
Aye.
Ms. Dominique Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Manny Langella,
Aye.
Nicholas Sachinelli, aye. Ms. Barbara Smith,
Yes.
Mr. David Hilverman,
Aye.
Mr. Kadeem Roberts,
Aye.
Ms. Diana Revelous,
Aye.
Ms. Darlene Young,
Yes.
Mr. John Kites,
Yes.
Mr. George Theorides,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. George Sarahcentee,
Yes.
Mr. Tom Livingston,
Yes.
Ms. Lisa Shanahan.
Yes.
That's unanimous. Mr. Mayor, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachinelli. So the next item on the agenda is item 7B6. Mr. Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 7B6 under the Finance and Claims Committee. We have the following resolution. Whereas Section 1-289 of the Norwalk Charter requires that a majority of the Common Council vote to establish a specific spending limit on locally expenditures during the process of establishing the next fiscal year's operating budget. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Norwalk that the maximum limit on the total appropriation for the City of Norwalk for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 shall be no more than $384,676,326. This appropriation cap represents total expenditures of $400,599,192 less estimated intergovernmental grants of $15,922,866. Be it further resolved that the result of this vote and resolution, together with the attached 2021-2022 budget guide, be forwarded by the clerk of the City of Norwalk to the Board of Estimate and Taxation.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. You're moving the item, and do you wish to speak on it?
Yes, just a couple of brief comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first would like to begin by thanking all of the Norwalk residents for their emails, phone calls, socially distanced discussions related to the operating budget. Your input and comments are greatly appreciated and always welcomed. We are all facing health and economic challenges we could not have remotely imagined or envisioned 12 months ago. All of these challenges are not over, and we need to continue to proceed forward cautiously because of the several unknowns ahead. I believe the current operating budget recommendation provides the opportunity to maintain, with the emphasis on maintain, the city's services and student learning within Norwalk. As we progress beyond the pandemic in 2022, our needs will become even greater as several households will continue to struggle towards recovery. We need long-term solutions that will reduce taxes and take us pertaining to enhancing city services and the student learning experience. A long-term plan which is the responsibility of this council to undertake. I support the current operating budget recommendation and the forwarding to the Board of Estimate and Taxation for further deliberation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Any other comments? Discussion. Mr. Kides.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I can't in good conscience support this tax increase, not at a time when so many of our residents are struggling financially and struggling to pay their mortgages, struggling to pay their rent, struggling even for the basic necessities. And for those reasons, I will be proposing an amendment. And I just want to notify the recording secretary that the only changes will be the numbers. And the maximum limit on the total appropriation for the city of Norwalk for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 shall be no more than $383,634,246. This appropriation cap represents total expenditures of $399,557,112, less estimated intergovernmental grants of $15,922,866. The rest of the language remains the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kides. Mr. Kides has recommended an amendment to the resolution. Is there discussion on the amendment presented by Mr. Kides? And then we would have to vote on the amendment to determine if the amendment will be, or if Mr. Kides' language will be included in the new amendment. Mr. Langella.
Yes, I would like to also second Mr. Kides' amendment. I too would equally like to thank the city and the BOE for their work this past year. It was truly innovation through crisis, but with that said, I don't think we're out of the economic tailwinds of COVID-19. There's families that lost sources of income, as well as residents on fixed incomes. There are too many unknowns in my mind about future revenue streams, the current complexion of our residential and commercial tax base. Will that stay the same? Will it shift? Potential moratoriums that could expire this year that have largely benefited our tax base. To be clear, I'm not discounting the ROI of a proper education or the efforts put forth by both the city side and the BOE this year. I just simply feel that we cannot ignore the undue burden of a large tax increase that this will put on the residents whom I was elected to represent. Equally, I think we are still waiting on an efficiency study too. That to me is a major box I need ticked. And ultimately, I believe we must continue to look inwards at where we can operate as a lean organization. And for these reasons, I support an amendment for a reduced cap as well.
Thank you. Mr. Livingston.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Mayor, I wonder if I can ask Mr. Kides the question as to how we arrived at that number, 1 point something million.
I looked at it based on the tax increase to my district and what I felt they could digest and be able to afford. It's a $1 million reduction from the original proposed cap, as we discussed in caucus.
I thought the number you gave was a little different, but okay, thank you. If I might, Mr. Mayor, continue.
Yes, you still have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I want to reiterate what's been said. I mean, this, and Mr. Sacinelli said, this is a particularly difficult year. I know we say that every year, how difficult this is, but this one, it seems worse than we've had in the past. We've heard from parents, we've heard from teachers, we've heard from members of the Board of Education, we've heard from other taxpayers, and it's hitting, the COVID is hitting everybody in all different ways. And I certainly understand the desires of many to give more money to schools, and I support the schools. I think we all support the schools. But I want to make a couple points because I'm going to support Mr. Kides' amendment. One, I want to be clear that we spoke in the Board of Education, and Mr. Hamilton has made it clear on a couple of occasions that they expect, typically they expect a surplus each year, someplace between 1% and 2%, which would translate into $2 to $4 million in additional funds. They of course have to ask the city to take advantage of that, but we have let them do that in the past, and I assume we would do that in the future. I also agree with another comment. We haven't had the efficiency study, and I think it's critical we have it. And another point, we've talked about the expectation, many people have heard the expectation of this federal stimulus funds coming in, and we don't know what those are. And it's kind of difficult knowing that some may go to the Board of Education. We just don't know how much. And I would rather approach this with the idea, let's see what they get. And if they don't get enough, have them come back, because otherwise we provide the funding. As we all know, it goes into the minimum budget requirement and we can't reduce in the future years. So I think the better approach would be to see what they get. If that's not sufficient, invite them to come back. But one last point I want to make is that in supporting Mr. Keity's amendment, I want to be clear that I am not directing this to any particular group. In fact, I want to make it clear that I'm leaving this to the BOE, I'm sorry, the Board of Estimating Taxation to find this money. I'm not going to direct them. My preference is to not come from the Board of Education, but I'm leaving it to them because they have more time and we'll be talking to everybody, every department, every person in those departments to figure out where it's most appropriate to take it. So again, I support this and thank you.
Mr. Keegan.
Thank you, Mayor. I will also be supporting Mr. Keity's amendment. And I want to remind all of us that we do need an efficiency study, but I think the important reason for that efficiency study for both city and Board of Education spending is that the taxpayers deserve to know how their money is being spent. Again, I thank everyone who called in, emailed, spoke tonight. I am proudly wearing my Norwalk band vest. I still have a child in the Norwalk Public School System. And I do agree with Mr. Livingston that we pass this on to the Board of Estimate and Taxation and let them figure out how this money is to be divvied up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keegan. Mr. Hooverman, I think you were next, and then Ms. Smith.
No, I think Ms. Smith had her hand up before me, if she would like to go.
Okay, you'll relinquish the floor to Ms.
I'll
Smith.
relinquish
Ms.
the
Smith.
floor. I'll speak next.
Thank you, Mr. Hooverman. I cannot support this amendment. While I really understand Mr. Keity's your concern for your constituents and for all of our constituents. I represent all of the cities and at-large member, but I also have to. I come from the education background and have spent time in our schools and. I know that we're not directing, this will move to the BET for the BET to make those final decisions on where that $1 million or so cut that you're talking about would come from. I do have real concerns for the Board of Ed. I want to step back a minute because I want to address some of the things that some parents have said and, some of what I've read in the paper about where we're at with our schools and I guess the perception of our schools. I want you to know, parents to know, I want real estate agents to know that we have great schools. We have excellent teachers. We have amazing support staff, counselors who work with our kids. We have schools that you can be proud of right now. I've had the opportunity to spend time in schools in Westport, in Darien, in Ridgefield, in Shelton, where I moved from to come to Norwalk. I have seen a lot of teachers and a lot of classrooms working with our kids, and you can have no doubt that our teachers, our staff, our administrators are equally as good. And what makes Norwalk different, you talk about our kids, you talk about, our test scores or this or that. Oh, we don't have good schools. We have great schools. What's different is our kids. And our kids come from so many diverse backgrounds. But it's our kids that make our schools so special and beautiful and diverse and enrich all of us. So I just really want you to have that perspective, and I challenge the real estate agents. When you hear people come in, because I mean, people are moving into Norwalk. They're not moving into just Westport and just Wilton and just Darien. They're coming to Norwalk for a reason, the same reason that I chose to come here, because of the beauty of the diversity here. So you can trust that we're doing a good job. And you can be proud that we have great schools. So I just wanted to address that. I've been really conflicted about this operating budget recommendations, not really just for the schools, but for the city. You know, the city, well, we funded the Board of Ed at a much higher rate over the last 7 years than the city. And so the city side has been hurting, and we really need to make that up. So I think that that's important to recognize. But my concerns really are, you know, it's just to meet the contractual requirements this year would be a 2.7% increase for the Board of Education. And I look at what our teachers and our kids and our staff have gone through this year. I mean, it's history. Our kids are writing history right now. They have been through hell. And COVID is not done with us. So I think that, you know, our kids deserve our support. I also am concerned about, you know, a 2% or what, you know, if we're going to send this back to the BET, again, I'm not supporting this amendment, but if it does go back to BET and they do look for places to cut, I mean, already at a 2% increase, that feels to me punitive to a new superintendent who we want to support. A superintendent who has a deep understanding of the disproportionality of equity among our students, and who has a passion and the wherewithal and know-how to address those issues. And she can help to uplift our kids. So I have concerns there. So, you know, I just for that reason, I know we have to wrap our arms around our whole city. We have people who are suffering, who can't pay their rent, who've lost their jobs, who, you know, when the rent moratorium ends, what are they going to do? We really do have to think about those tax increases. I'm really concerned about that. We've got to wrap our arms around all of our residents this year, but I can't support the amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Hooverman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Councilperson Smith. I echo a lot of what you said. I cannot support this. It is, again, I believe the same thing, that it's punitive in nature, and it punishes a new administration for the Board of Ed and our schools before they even really get their feet underneath them. I mean, this is tough. I mean, we're all experiencing fatigue that has the ability to drive us to distraction and take our eyes off what I believe is the real horizon. And I've been troubled by some of the rhetoric that has been levied through this particular budget season. And I've been saddened by the lack of fundamental understanding that we're all on the same side. And this side is a side that only wants what's best for the city of Norwalk. Now, even though we may disagree sometimes about just how that looks, I felt at time that many of the parties may have lost the ability to actually dialogue in order to find common ground, consensus, and a dirty little word that we don't seem to like to use, which is compromise. And this has happened on all sides. I mean, I'm here, frankly, I would propose to amend the amount of the proposed budget cap for the fiscal year 2022 operating budget from the 400,599,192 to 401,641 or $401,641,271, and then change the proposed recommended allocation to the Board of Education to $213,626,326, which reflects a 2.5% increase, which if we look at what Mr. Livingston said earlier about budget surpluses and the COVID relief money that potentially will be coming to Norwalk, puts them closer to taking care of the contractual obligations and keeps their budget intact moving forward for our educational processes. I mean, I think that this is the bucket, so to speak, that is better for the BET to allocate the funds for the upcoming 2022 fiscal year. I mean, it's been a difficult year, and our city has been steadfast and resilient. I mean, but our kids have endured changes that we adults never have dreamt of for them. And our teachers and administrators have risen to the task of getting our kids back into the classroom at no small personal expense to their own social, emotional health. And we also have, as I stated, this new administration, and they're working hard to create the next strategic plan for our children. I mean, infrastructure is key. And I maintain that the schools are a primary component of this city's infrastructure. We need to maintain the investment in our kids to the best of our ability, as it is the cornerstone of our viability for longevity, commerce, and income. Now, I realize that this represents a tax rise, and I'm fully cognizant and fully aware of that. But we need to maintain the investment in our kids to the best of our ability, as I've stated. And this increase above what the previous proposal at 2% would be an increase in the first taxing district of $17, second taxing $16, third taxing $22, fourth taxing $16, fifth taxing $27, and sixth taxing $55. And this is a small price to pay, in my opinion, to bring the recommended cap and the BOE recommended appropriation closer to covering the contractual obligations that the Board of Ed has identified in their budget increase. I mean, they need this to help maintain current levels of educational services, and I feel that we should honor this request and get them a little closer to what they ask for. I mean, this slight increase will also give the Board of Estimate and Taxation a little bigger bucket, so to speak, to work with as they begin the arduous task of figuring out how to fill this budgetary container. So that's where I'm at. I cannot support this amendment as proposed by Councilman Keites. And if it fails, I will bring that amendment to the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Hooverman. Ms. Shanahan.
I will be supporting
And
Mr.
Mr.
Keites.
Sacchinelli.
Oh, thank you. I will be supporting Mr. Keites' amendment, and I want to address a little bit the conversation about punitive. In no way am I thinking of this amendment as a punitive directed at the Board of Education. I'm looking at the entire budget for the entire city, and I think we have to think about our entire population and who's paying taxes in this city. And all of us are paying taxes. If you're a renter, if you're an owner, if you're a business, we're all supporting this. And it has been an extraordinarily difficult year. Yes, for the children, and an amazing job by the teachers to keep at it, but also for our small business owners and our homeowners and even our renters. I think everyone is under the gun. And the one reason why I'm comfortable with this is that we are going to get federal stimulus money. We don't know what that number is going to be, but it's going to be something. And there is a surplus. And I feel as though just the very numbers that David was pointing out that seem to be lacking right now in the Board of Education's budget may well be filled with those buckets. And we do have the ability to consider needs later in the year where we can do a special appropriations if we really are concerned that the Board of Ed is not getting what it needs. But we don't really have clear visibility as to what the Board of Ed really does need when the kids do come back in the classroom. And I think we should keep our powder dry, because as all of us know, and this is the thing that's hard to explain to our constituents and our residents, we're not cutting their budget, we're cutting their budgetary request. And so we're not taking away from the Board of Ed. We never can take away from the Board of Ed. Whatever we set is the number they're always going to start with in the following year. And we have a chance to be more strategic with our deployment of funds later in the year when we know more and we can see how this hopeful ending to COVID comes about and where the need is. So for that reason, I'd prefer to follow up and support Mr. Keites' amendment so that we have maybe the ability to do more later in the year.
Thank you, Ms. Shanahan. Mr. Sacchinelli.
Yes, thank you. I too am going to support Mr. Keites' amendment. I would hold myself personally accountable, and I find it personally that it would be irresponsible to move forward with a tax increase that's remotely near what it was during a non-COVID year, while we're trying to address the needs and concerns of COVID and the unique dynamic that COVID has driven. We've spoke about the Board of Ed. I don't think it really is about the Board of Ed or any any direct department here. But speaking to the Board of Ed, I would love to give them as much as possible, because I think they've done a great job in years past, and I've said that publicly before, and I know that they're going to do a great job in future years. But I think someone who spoke prior to me said that we're aware that people are losing their jobs and losing their homes. So what good is a great education if their parents are on the street? I mean, we can't take that approach. We also know that there's a downward trend in our commercial tax base. So I'm very concerned about the future year is going to hold. If we have a downward trend, if that continues on their commercial tax base, if we lose businesses, we're going to be facing a situation in future years where the entire burden is going to go on the residents, right? Now, we don't know what the future holds. I said that during the president's remarks. There's a lot of things that could change between now and then, and we have a lot of work to do. But right now, addressing this year with this dynamic and the information that we're aware of today, it would be irresponsible if we have an opportunity to control that tax increase. So I will be supporting Mr. Kaites.
Thank you, Mr. Sacchinelli. Further discussion? Ms. Young.
You're muted, darling.
You're muted.
Sorry, I don't want to belabor the point, but I will be supporting Mr. Kaites' amendment as well. I think everyone has pretty much articulated my thoughts and feelings on this matter. And we just have to be good stewards of our budget for the city. And that's what we're trying to do. And I think one of the things that I think I've heard people say, some of the folks who spoke and David, I think you might have mentioned it, it's not a them against us, us against them. We as the city, we're all in this together. We're all paying the taxes. We're all responsible for what goes on here. And I think all of us are really trying to do the best that we can. And I don't think that it would be fiscally responsible for us to go up to the 2.5. And I think we need to stay where we are, see where the money comes from, if the additional dollars come in from the federal government to the Board of Education, and then we have that ability to fill in the gap. And I think that's the best way to go. And I think moving forward, I think the one thing that needs to happen is the efficiency study. We can't really feel like we're doing our job if we don't really know what we're funding and where the money is going. And then we come back to this cycle again. Next year, we'll be in the same place, having the same conversation, asking the same questions, but hopefully not. Hopefully we will have an efficiency study that will be able to be that guide for both the Board of Education and for us as council people moving forward. So but what I also want to say lastly is I just want to thank Greg, the Finance Committee, the BET, everybody for the Board of Education. This is not an easy task. These couple of weeks become probably one of the most stressful weeks that we all have to deal with. And we grapple with, what we want to see happen because we want the city to succeed. So I will be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Further discussion on Mr. Kaites' amendment? Mr. Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be extremely brief. I feel I will not be supporting the amendment to reduce the cap by $1 million simply because I feel the Chief Financial Officer has done a great job in the due diligence of looking at all the city departments and coming forward with a very bare bones budget recommendation on the city side. And this reduction of $1 million creates the potential for the Board of Ed's request to go down by $1 million, which in my opinion would be catastrophic. So I cannot support this reduction. I think the current cap, which allows 2% to go to the Board of Education, is fair. Something that we will have to continue to work with the Board of Education going forward. If additional requests come in, as others had mentioned, we'll deal with that. But to the potential for it to be reduced by $1 million down to 1%, I feel that would be, again, I'll use the word catastrophic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Further discussion? Seeing none, then I would ask Mr. Kites if you could please repeat your amendment so we can vote on that and everybody has the proper numbers before them.
Unmute myself. The maximum limit on the total appropriation for the city of Norwalk fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 shall be no more than $383,634,246. This appropriation cap represents total expenditures of $399,557,112. Less estimated intergovernmental grants of $15,922,866.
Thank you, Mr. Kites. We'll proceed to a roll call vote. We will be voting on Mr. Kites' amendment. And then based on what happens on this vote, we will proceed with further discussion. Ms. King. Roll call vote, Ms. King. You're still muted.
There we go. I'm sorry. Mr. Burnett,
I vote nay.
Ms. Johnson,
No.
Mr. Langella,
Aye.
Mr. Sacchinelli,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
No.
Mr. Huvelman,
Nay.
Mr. Roberts,
Nay.
Ms. Revolis,
Aye.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Kites,
Yes.
Mr. Theodorides,
Yes.
Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Cyrenaides,
Yes.
Mr. Livingston,
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan,
Yes.
you have 5 noes, 10 yeses.
So the amendment proposed by Mr. Kites passes. Now we will vote on the amendment on the resolution as amended. Do we have any discussion before we go to a roll call vote? Seeing none, Ms. King, would you take a roll call vote on the resolution as amended?
Mr. Burnett,
I vote no.
Ms. Johnson,
No.
Mr. Langella,
Aye.
Mr. Sacchinelli,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
No.
Mr. Huvelman,
Hasn't changed. Nay.
Mr. Roberts,
No.
Ms. Revolis,
Aye.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Kites, Mr. Kites,
Yes.
okay.
Sorry.
Mr. Theodorides,
Yes.
Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Cyrenaides,
Yes.
Mr. Livingston,
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan, Ms. Shanahan,
You're muted.
Sorry, yes, I muted myself too quickly.
ten yes, 5 no.
Thank you, Ms. King. Can you recount the vote on the amendment? Because I thought it was the same. I think you said 9-5. It might be actually 10 to,
I said 10 to 5 before.
okay, so it was 10-5, okay. And the same vote, 10-5.
Yes.
The resolution passes as amended. Before we adjourn, I too would like to thank everybody for their hard work. I know Mr. Dakowitz spent many, many hours with department heads and others in various meetings, along with his budget director, Ms. Fogel. And they put a lot of energy and a lot of effort into this. And I think we're really acting in the good interest of the city and the taxpayers. Having said that, I also appreciate the comments made by the council members today. I think it clearly sends a signal to the residents of Norwalk that we are being good custodians of their tax dollars and trying to do the best that we possibly can. We are, and I will say this cautiously, we are very hopeful that the money coming from the federal government will help to supplement some of the money for the Board of Education. Just today, there was a release that $150 billion was being put aside for education. And one of the uses for that money that would be authorized to avoid layoffs. So we are hopeful as we move forward that some of the money that will be allocated to the City of Norwalk Board of Education will help to bring them back to what they need in order to provide the education that we know that our young people are getting and the education that we all support. Again, we will be watching this closely. The Board of Estimate and Taxation now will look at the budget recommendations of Mr. Dakowitz and work towards the cap that has now been voted upon by this body. Again, I want to thank you all for your thoughtful discussion. I think, as I said, it sends a clear message to the citizens of Norwalk that we are thinking very deeply and really looking at everything and making decisions based on what we feel is in the best interest of the city while still providing an education for our students. So again, thank you. Having said that, I'm sorry, Ms. Revolou?
May I just, is it possible I could just say one thing quickly?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Okay, just to clarify for our residents, I really do want to make this a point. So, and furthermore, we can understand, I think one of the misconceptions of where exactly is Norwalk comparative to, right? I know we have our areas around New Canaan and Darien, Rowayton that, you know, of course we would love to amount to be at some point, but I just want for the parent that's watching or people who are not in the know, Norwalk is comparative to Ansonia, Danbury, Derby, East Hartford, Meriden, Norwich, Stamford, and West Haven. So the closest comparative person we can look at is Stamford. So I just want that to be in the minds of some parents. And Norwalk actually outperformed this H grouping in 2018, and we're still writing for the reports for 1920. So just that too, in our understanding of how to keep this in a manner great for children and for their families that live here. I just want the community to understand the actual towns they're comparative to Norwalk. So maybe it can help clarify the understandings of per pupil, payment assets, achievements, so on and so forth.
Thank you, Ms. Revolou. And just two other things before we adjourn. One is, it's been stated over and over again that what we allocate this year becomes the base for next year. We cannot give less. We can only give more. just like we do every single year. We have to give more. And I know sometimes people read the paper and it says that the Board of Estimate or the Common Council cut the school budget by $5 million. That is not really the case. What happens is if there's a cut, it's a cut in their request, not a cut in the baseline from the previous year. So rest assured, we are going to continue working on this budget. It's not a finalized budget yet. And there's a lot of layers to go through, and hopefully we'll come out in a situation where everybody's just a little bit happy. So again, thank you. I know Mr. Dakowitz is smiling at that one. If there's no other discussion, I'd entertain a motion. Ms. Revolus?
Close by. To end.
I think a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn, sorry. Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.
We're all tongue-tied. Bye.